A week before that family was attacked on the East Bank Esplanade, two elderly men were also randomly attacked in downtown Portland. Yesterday, we learned one of the victims has died. 82-year-old Donald Pierce suffered critical injuries. Police say Keffer White kicked and punched Pierce and another man in his 80s after making fun of them for being elderly. White later told police he'd been homeless for 13 years in Portland and was concerned about his own mental health. White was charged with attempted murder and assault, but we expect more charges now that one of the victims has died. However, we also noticed White was initially booked on bias crime charges. It does make sense, since police say he ridiculed them for being elderly before the attack. But those charges were then dropped. Why? Well, it turns out age actually is not listed in Oregon's bias crime statute. It reads, a person commits a bias crime in the first degree if the person intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly causes physical injury to another person because of the person's perception of the other person's race, color, religion, gender, identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. I asked Lewis and Clark law professor Tung Yin about that.
It does not cover age. It could cover age if the legislature wanted to amend the statute. Of course, you can't do it retroactively, but if this case prompts the legislature to say, hey, elderly people are actually a vulnerable category and that we need to have extra deterrence against people attacking elderly people, the legislature could add that as a protected category, protected meaning that it would then qualify as bias. And we do see this in other contexts. Age discrimination, for example. Age is a protected category. Under federal law, once you hit 40, it is illegal to discriminate against somebody because of their age. So that's, again, something that could be done, but it just has not been done in this case.
9 states and the District of Columbia do have age included in their bias or hate crime laws. Washington, by the way, is not one of those states. Yin says that in the past, shocking crimes that get a lot of attention have led to laws being changed, like the case of Matthew Shepard, a Wyoming teenager who was tortured and murdered for being gay in 1998.
We typically think of the hot button hate crimes, which is what motivates these sorts of legislation. And so, Matthew Shepard, of course, that's one that prompted, I think, a lot of jurisdictions to include sexual orientation as a basis of bias or hate crime. And that's something where you can see that there are some people who have invidious, really nasty feelings of discrimination against people in these categories. So again, race, sexual orientation, gender identity, you see is in the statute now. I guess with age, maybe there hasn't been as much of a push simply because there haven't been the sort of galvanizing national headlines of, oh, this is an awful crime, we really need to do something about it. This case may be one. I mean, the allegations of kicking somebody to death, anybody, but especially an elderly person, are pretty horrifying.
It is worth mentioning, Oregon and Washington both added protections for sexual orientation in their hate crime laws before Shepard's murder in 1989 in Oregon and 93 in Washington. But the states more recently added protections for gender identity. That happened in 2008 in Oregon and not until 2019 in Washington. There are still a number of states that do not include either in their hate crime laws.
The never-ending